Welcome. I'm glad that you're here this morning. We're going to start off by doing a little Bible study, and we're going to be in the book of Acts. And if you want to turn with me, let me see if I can get this to, oops, maybe I have to be on this side. We're going to turn here to Acts chapter 2, 42 to 47. So how about if we work through this? If you want to look at the screen, if you want to follow along there, it's all good, however it works for you. Little print, get the big print. So let me start off, and I'll get to verse 42, and somebody else keep on reading. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer.
Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles.
All the believers were together and had everything in common.
They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts.
They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts,
Praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
Okay, so when you're thinking about this is Acts chapter 2. This is right after Pentecost. This is like the first things that were happening. And for me, when, I keep on going to people who are training me in new things, and I say, what's best practices? You just tell me what the best practices are, and I'll do it that way twice. The third time I'll start improvising. Because you don't ask an expert to come in and tell you or train you on how to do something and then right away say, oh, I think that won't work here. So we have to try and figure out how we're going to use this. When I listen to best practices, I think about best practices, I think about this is what the Holy Spirit led the people to do right away. And if that's true, this is probably a model for us, wouldn't you say? Okay, so what are pieces of the model that you're seeing?
Gathering regularly and frequently.
They got together lots, okay? What else?
Apostles' teaching.
The apostles' teaching. So there's a Bible study, or at that time, whatever the apostles were teaching, that was a key for it. What's another thing?
They ate together.
They ate. It's a foretaste of heaven. When we had our pulled pork lunch the other day, and I kept on saying it's a foretaste of heaven, and folks said, oh no, it's not going to be like this. Yes, it is. There's like, how do you feed 7 billion people? And what are we going to do all the time? Well, it says there's a feast there. And it's not like we're going to go into, this is the Mueller clan, and all the Muellers of all the generations are going to be over here. We may do that a little bit, but it's not like you have your own little house with your own little family in your own little place at your own little table. It's all of us together. It's the communio, the with one with one another, of all the saints of all the ages. And so I think it's going to be a great feast. It's going to be loud. I was kind of happy when the crowd started dying down because I could hear the person next to me. But that all that says is a lot of people were excited. Okay, eating together. What else? Prayer. They spent time together with one another in prayer. It's not, I've got this thing that I do when I need. It is an open prayer life. How about it?
Praising God.
Praising God. So there is worship and glorifying God. That they're seeing God's hand in all kinds of things. They watched out for each other financially. Because it said, oh, listen, God gave me this. I got 2 of them. Here, have one. Let's sell this.
Wonders and signs
There's wonders and signs, and who was doing them?
by the apostles.
The apostles were doing it. Not everybody does wonders and signs, but there are wonders and signs.
God added to their numbers.
People are saying, I want some of that. Yeah, God added to their numbers.
They did all those things gladly
They had glad and sincere hearts. Everything, the whole thing, from worship, prayer, eating together, everything, everybody was sincere, without wax, sincere, genuine. What else?
There was growth.
There's growth. No, nobody said, okay, we're done. We're finished, or I've made it this far. There's growth. All those things were part of the original church, if you will. So, why aren't we like that, or are we? What's some of the things we're thinking? Who's ready to report? You're up, Brian.
Well, I think our group sort of decided that we do this, do we or don't we meet these sort of criteria, and we said yes. So clearly, as one of the things we decided that, I think it says in there, all the believers were together, etc. And we decided that it's hard for a group like this. We don't see, we've got pockets of ministries and subcultures within Trinity, but the larger group, it's very hard to get the all aspect of that together. So that was one of the things we talked about, but we definitely have sub-pockets within each ministry and groups and subcultures that definitely are trying to hit on a lot of these things. So we think we're doing some things well, but again, the bar is set high, so I don't know that we're doing any of these extraordinarily well. But I think within the groups, I know Sam said her ministry hits on almost every one of these aspects to some degree. I guess.
So we're at it, we're not there yet.
Yes.
Okay, cool. How about somebody else? Go for it, Bill.
So what we talked about to start with is that there's yeses and nos to everything. And we talked about there's a lot of fellowship opportunities here at Trinity, and that's a key word, the opportunities. Do we take advantage? Do we participate? And that's the no part, because sometimes, for instance, this meeting, people had to be like a little bit of dragged and pushed and coerced into coming to the meeting. So it's a question of taking advantage of it. We talked about monthly Christ Care meetings and how a Christ Care meeting is just about living the words that are in these phrases here, and it's getting together, it's eating together, it's studying the Bible together. It's a lot of those things. We talked about work and how it's an opportunity to witness to God there at work as well. And I think that's what wraps it.
Okay. How about somebody else? Anything else unique? Because unique is what we seek.
We talked about Trinity being a vibrant community of people that attracts people into the community here, but we're not doing a very good job of attracting people who are unchurched, people who are not Christians. We're not seeing a lot of conversion growth. We're seeing growth by assimilation of people who are like us, already Christians, mostly Lutherans.
Yeah. And how about glad and sincere hearts around here, It's always a challenge, too, to have glad. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the house of the Lord, because there's a lot of people who've got the attitude of, what's Trinity going to make me do next? Right? Have you ever heard that? Okay, am I the only person who's heard that? Or nobody wants to admit to it?
I'm hoping that that's not a true statement, Pastor.
It is a true statement. It's the feeling. But part of that is we have a lot of immature people here too, and we're working towards growing up to be like this. Now, how are we going to grow up to be like this? And that's the challenge, and that's the challenge for us as leaders to deal with. This morning, we're going to work through some things. I'll have PowerPoint copies out for you in another segment. And the reason is because if you put them out too early, everybody goes through it to try and figure out where we're going and understand this and find something. And they say, well, when it gets to this is what I'm going to say, because we really like you just to kind of respond to the day. We want to talk about us and how we are as the body of Christ. And I want to talk, starting off with, 3 issues that we have as our challenges. These are issues that I'd see. The energy of a mature congregation, and we are a mature congregation. You can't be 100 years old and not be mature. You know, I'm not talking about the level of maturity that we have of members, but I'm just talking about our organization. When we say been there, done that, bought the T-shirt, we were the subject of the T-shirt. The T-shirt was in and out of style. Now you can get it if you go back to Salvation Army, go over to, you can find it in the clothing stores. We've done it. And that's one of the challenges of being an older group. How do we keep doing it? We want to talk about white noise in our communication, and white noise as a congregation, and then our complicated programming and alignment. So let's start off. This first part we're going to talk about in terms of energy is life cycle of congregations. Now, this is something that I've been teaching. Some of you will have had this in prior days. I've been teaching this probably since 1985 to us and this family of faith and other places, and just talking about the life cycle of a congregation. When we're going to be describing a congregation, there's 4 different elements that we're going to be describing. The first one is energy. The second one is programs. So the energy of the congregation, the development of programs in the congregation, the development of administration in the congregation, and finally, inclusion and interpersonal relationships. That's the I. So you can kind of, when I use inclusion, sometimes people don't get it. So interpersonal relationships helps people to understand it is how we build up the kind of fellowship of believers. And the reason I've got these in 4 corners is really these 2 stand in opposition to one another. We're somewhere on the continuum, and these 2 stand in opposition for one another, because programs sap energy and administration saps inclusion. You know, when it's just kind of that feel to it. Now, this is a study that was done, Martin Sorinin, and if you want to read it's an 11-page booklet. I've got about 10 copies of it if you want to read the research, the whole research behind this. But let me show you how this goes. When you think about the life cycle of a congregation, you've seen a sine curve. These are the 4 areas we're going to be talking about. When you're starting off in a congregation, you have a big E, a lot of energy, and not a whole lot of programs, not a lot of administration, not a lot of inclusion, but a lot of energy. How many of you have been involved in a mission start or a restart of a small church? We got one, we got a couple others. You know, energy, when we did Family and Faith, huge energy. A lot of people really excited about going down there, and we're going to win the world for Jesus, and it was great, but it was disorganized. And so when you have energy, it's kind of like kids, teenagers in life. You can say about them in their driving and other ways, they have great velocity, very little direction, right? They're getting there fast, but when you say, well, where are you going? Well, I don't know, but I got to go there faster. When you begin growing as a congregation, the energy is still there, and your inclusion or interpersonal relationships grow. That's in a smaller organization as it grows together. And you think about how your small group grew. You know, how many of you have been involved in one of our Christ Care groups or another small group ministry? So what happens is you start getting to know one another. It's great. You're spending more time together with glad and sincere hearts usually, and having happy high times together. And it's a very idyllic time. But as you grow, if you start growing and including more people, finally, you have to get some programs. Okay? So you start having an organization instead of just saying, why can't we just be like the people of God together? He says, well, because a bunch of us got kids, we need a confirmation program. We got a Sunday school. we're going to feed the poor. We're going to have a community walk. There's programs that happen as the organization becomes more complex and larger. And then finally, in your prime, you get this administration down pat, so that you're kind of up on this hill, programs, everything's going willy-nilly, and it takes an administrator to be able to keep that congregation from exploding. Most congregations, either they never get past here, or in their infancy, they never want to get into programs. And this is why you think that, what's the average size of church in America?
250.
150.
Less than 100.
It's less than 100, 78. You know? So there's a lot of small churches, because there's a couple of big churches, but a lot of small churches where they don't grow much beyond this, and they don't get to the programs. And they look at congregations like us and say, we wish we could do what you could do. Well, doing what we do comes with a price, right? Because there's a lot of stuff happening here, and people try to make choices. And when you have great, when everything's going well, you're up at this top level, but then you start the other side to maturity. What's the first thing you lose? Energy. What's the next thing you lose? Programs. What's the next thing you lose? Any intimacy. And what's the last thing you have? Administration. I went to a congregation when I started off that was at this level, when really, they're probably here, maybe there, but it was a family congregation. They were very happy to have 45 people on their shut-in list and 25 in worship. And when I said, well, what are we doing about our community? He says, well, the doors are open. You know, Pastor, they can come in if they want to. And everyone was shaking their heads and going, yeah, what a surprise. And there's a lot of congregations that work their way, in particular as you start becoming an older, and in our case, an urban congregation that has stopped ministering to their community. And it just becomes kind of our old group of folks that we always get together. And in my first parish in Philadelphia, we had people that were driving an hour and a half to come to church. And it was basically a reason to go see family every Sunday. At least once a week they were with one another. So can you see where this kind of, the model works? Are you catching it? Okay, so how do you keep up at this point? You have to keep on putting energy in. And that's the challenge. Ginning up that energy and keeping the energy. And it's like if you think about it, surfing, you're always on the edge of that wave where the energy is coming over the top. And there's always that danger that you're going to crash and burn. But if you do it just right, it's a great ride. Now, I've never been up on a surfboard, but I have been on bodyboards and other things. And when you get it, you're coming down, you're just in that right spot. It'll take you all the way into the shore. And it's fun. It's not a whole lot of fun missing it, waiting for the wave, or living with the results of being on the other side and being rolled by the wave. So there's that one spot, and as a congregation, as an organization, we have that same challenge, and as a church. So let's talk. Where are we now? I'm going to put this back up. Let's spend a couple of minutes chitting and chatting, and we'll see what we come up with as an organization.
I think what we discussed was we think we're little e, big P, big A, little I. So we were discussing, we're kind of in we thought we were over the peak into the maturity side of the chart here, but we're not exactly on the chart. And we weren't entirely sure. We came up with we're Germans, we don't do it the way everybody wants us to do it,
Okay, so what else? Who else is thinking? What are we thinking? Go for it.
I think our discussion was more around we're in the maturity phase, and part of that is because we see lack of energy around some things, and it depends, and I think we used some examples around some of the programs, especially like when we were talking about the 5-year plan, and should we continue to do things, and I think we saw more of, well, let's just continue to do them without the result I think we would have expected is it's time to stop doing this one, or there's a process to decide to stop doing something or other, and I think we try and do more than we should be in certain cases.
Okay, so and that kind of stuff saps your energy. Instead of increasing your energy, keeping it at the top, it saps your energy, and once you start sapping the energy, you've got to find a way to put it back in, okay? How about it? What other things? Yeah, Brian?
We also felt that the energy is lacking. We have programs, we have administration. We also had some questions about inclusion, and we also felt that inclusion would be lost before the bureaucracy point of your bell curve.
Okay.
Just because of the fact of not having those interpersonal relationships, that kind of falls out, more over at the top of the hump. So that's
Sure.
kind of where we also felt that we also were. So
Okay.
we're off the chart, but we're in
and
there.
sometimes we just say, again, this is somebody's research, but it gets us thinking about a model. So let's rewrite the model. And say we're thinking about what is this as a church when we go through different stages of growth and different stages of our maturity, and are we always thinking about the energy, positive energy or any energy that we have? Are we always thinking about the programs and how programs sap energy, if you will, if you want to get too many of them? Are we thinking about the administration, how to keep everything in order and in a way that people can understand it, and then always having in advance the resources that you need to do the next thing? We're thinking about the interpersonal relationships and inclusion. The reason, and this is a part of the research if you read the whole thing, the reason why the aristocracy includes the administration, because there's a group of people and they're very included, they're very tight and very close-knit, there's just nobody can get in. And it's kind of like, think about small groups. How is it that you break into a small group? After a while, they become mature, and they always, we always get together on Monday nights, or we always get together on Tuesdays, but there's, unless you've got the energy of the open chair, unless you've got the, who's being trained for the next leadership, when are we going to break up, and how are we going to increase our number? Who are we going to invite to this next? Unless you're thinking about that, it's very easy for a small group to go over the top of this, and they just become a group of people that gets together, and you've stopped the purpose for being there, other than just to kind of be there. And finally, when everyone says, I'm just going there just to be there, we're not really accomplishing anything, we're not doing what we originally were set to do, I'm not finding the purpose in this, the group stops meeting, doesn't it? And that's kind of the concept. So the thing I wanted us to deal with is there are stages that we go through. And the other thing is the key at the top, if you think about how do you do it, well, energy is the way we continue to stay at the top of the inclusion of energy. Now, a part of the challenge of energy and growing as a congregation, growing as as an organization, a part of our challenge is white noise in communication and just white noise in our lives. And I wonder if you remember really kind of what white noise was. or is. I first got to know white noise by being a kid who stayed up too late, like this.
At this time, WMTV, Madison, Wisconsin, now concludes its broadcast day and permanently ceases analog transmissions to southern Wisconsin. WMTV is owned and operated by Gray Television Group, Incorporated. Regular programming continues on WMTV DT, UHF Channel 19, Virtual Channel 15.1.
Stores closed. Can't believe they got it.
Okay, so that's what I would wake up to. Why don't I wake up to this anymore?
It's not on.
Program 24/7.
It just goes. Okay, so out of our 24/7s, what do you like about 24/7?
Getting medicine if your kid's sick at 2 in the morning.
Getting medicine at 2 in the morning. You don't have to wake anybody up. You don't have to go to the pharmacist. It used to be you could go knock on the pharmacist's door and you say, the doctor prescribed this, you know, can you help me? And the guy might not be happy about it, but that was a part of being a small town pharmacist or a city pharmacist.
I made my living for years in the middle of the night when everybody was sleeping. So
You made your living.
Mhm.
So you did
I was waitressing.
waitressing, okay, a night diner.
Nighttime. And
Yeah. Okay. How about it?
It's kind of nice sometimes that there's always something going on if you happen to be awake.
If you happen to be awake, you can always find something. It may not be worth watching, you know, or listening to, but I would go from when the TV stopped working. Well, I just went to the radio, and I would wake up in the middle of the night in Maryland, and on my little AM radio, because I could listen to the Blackhawks. I didn't know what hockey was because we didn't play hockey in Maryland, and it was never on TV really. We didn't have a local team, and so I kept on thinking, I wonder what they're doing, and the lines are coming on, and there's I tried to figure out what in the world would a power play be. You know, it was a strange thing, but I'd listen in the middle of the night and see how far I could listen to. What other things are the blessings? As a single dad, I can go and get my shopping done, put the kids to bed, and go get my shopping done after the work day. And if you go to the grocery store at 11 o'clock at night or to 2 o'clock in the morning, what you see really is a bunch of dads. All of us in the same situation, trying to figure out how to make it through the next day. What's the disadvantage of it? 24-hour, what's one thing?
For me, work never stops.
Work never stops.
I work 4 time zones. So I start out on the East Coast and then I end my day very late finishing up on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And if I'm involved with Europe, then I hop over to Europe.
You know, it's amazing. That's a curse for you. Here's a blessing. You know, when we pass out pins, we haven't done it the last 2 or 3 years. We've done some other things, but when we pass out pins, we have those made. I literally will make a design, send it to Florida. It will go to China. It will go to India. It will go to Ireland, and the next morning, the whole design's finished. And they say, if you send me $500, we'll get these done in 10 days and shipped to you. And if there's any changes, it just goes through that whole thing. Somebody's always working on this project. We are an interdependent economy. What's other curses?
We want everything instantly.
Everything. How come? When I was on the board of directors at Valpo, this literally what the president said, I don't even know what to do with this. You got a call from a parent saying, this professor is not responding to my child. I can't believe it. He sent him email after email after email, and he hasn't responded. This was 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? So he's thinking, this has gone on for days or weeks. The kids started sending them at 2 a.m. And by 6 had said, how come this professor, I'm calling mom and dad. And by 8 o'clock, they're calling the president of the university. And finally you have to say, are you nuts? But we do get nuts that way. Because we expect that we can always get a signal. We can always get this. And it leads to some incredibly complicated lives. Just think about when we as a congregation speak to our community. There's things that I always know, things that tell me when I really hit a hot button. Like I've said the 2 times that I've had standing ovations in church. One of them was when I talked about gentlemen's clubs, and I said, I don't know a gentleman who would go there, and the women in the congregation stood up. And the other time is when I said, I think I'd like to start a special group, a new group called Spasms, Spiritual People Against Sunday Morning Sports. And people just stood up and started cheering. That says there's a desire in us. This is not how we were designed. This is not what we were designed for. The challenge is, how do we as a congregation run counterculture to that, or are we just a part of the white noise? Yeah.
Well, your bell curve, that you had up, I feel like our park district is going off. They're trying to get us all to be inclusive and programs and getting us all involved in our neighborhoods. And then you have, most of us who don't live by their families, so then you have your extended family who is doing the same thing. How do we get together and include each other, and how do we get this energy to get people to, whatever. And then even Ben's karate school, I feel like they're doing this kind of, okay, we need to have programs and including and have picnics, and, they're trying to be what we're trying to be with the church. And, and then high schools and schools are trying to get people to do that way. So I feel like Trinity is just one of, and it could just be because that's how it is in the suburbs, or that's how it is when you live in a bigger city. Because where I grew up, we didn't have park districts. You either played at the school or that was it. So I just see everything that we touch is trying to be that form. They're trying to be the end all to get people involved. I don't know, do other people feel that way?
Yes.
Okay. So
Don't they all have to justify their existence as a partner, as a church, as a school?
Yeah.
Especially if they're taxing bodies and collecting money, we have to have more.
right, the libraries and
They're all justifying their existence, but they're also they have a message that they want you to respond to. They don't want you to forget them. And so, why is it that frankly, our park district cares if there's a family day, right, for the park district? Because what's their job? It is to hold the family together. It's supposed to be provide recreation, provide a park where families can go and play, instead of providing this program. And the programs keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's where people are torn. And a challenge for us is, people are torn with us. And there's so many things going on, we become a part of the white noise. And let me give you a very clear example. This springtime we've been doing Sow for Double Harvest. Now, it was a stealth plan. It was started up to build momentum. And it took so long to build momentum. I was amazed by this. For instance, the Middlebrooks, a couple of other people, the Velchiks, wrote personal notes to 20 families to say, come to our house to talk about the future of your church and everything else. Personal notes. Made personal phone calls as a follow-up. And how many folks RSVP'd? Zero. How many folks RSVP'd? Two. It can't even get onto the radar screen of most people. And this is vital to us as a congregation. And what the idea is we want a time where the pastor can talk to everybody in a small group setting about issues that we have to deal with and where we're going. And here's the strange thing. When people come to the meetings, they're excited about this. And they say, sure, I'm going to pitch in. I understand this now. But the Sow for Double Harvest as a program becomes white noise. Right? People aren't rising up and saying, we've got to be at this or we've got to do that. It's just kind of... And even, we're trying to get kids registered or enrolled, and we set deadlines. And even with that, we had, after the deadline, we still had 60 out of 280 kids that weren't enrolled at the end of the process of moving this along. And folks said, well, I didn't know I had to do this. I didn't, and it's not their fault, in a sense. We haven't broken through the white noise. And that's the challenge. I mean, people didn't know this was important. That's the challenge. And so we've got a lot of programs, a lot of great things we're doing, but when we've got so many things we're doing, everything becomes the white noise. So. What things did you catch out of that?
Community work.
Okay.
That's
Teamwork.
my dad.
Community. What?
That's my dad.
That's my dad.
Pride.
Yeah.
You can accomplish a lot and accomplish the impossible if you believe.
Accomplishing the impossible through faith. Yeah.
And not just by faith, but by putting that faith into action.
Putting the faith into action, not just by thinking it, by living it. One of I don't think physically that can ever happen. It's a nice cartoon, because I think swimming down, they all have to be pushing against the same thing, and it just doesn't work with a net that way. But it's a great concept, and it's interesting when all the energy is going in every which direction. Then you're going to get lifted up. It's like the snare of Satan is going to get you. But even when we're caught up in the snare, when we're in the same direction and aligned, freedom happens. And this idea of alignment as a congregation and figuring out how to help people get the idea, swim down, because not everybody got it. First there was a couple at the bottom, and if you watch closely the next time you see Finding Nemo, this is towards the end, but next time you see Finding Nemo, what you'll see is that there is still this confusion at the top and confusion at the top, and finally, once everyone is aligned, then stuff starts happening. So that's a challenge for us as the body of Christ, and a challenge for me as a communicator, breaking through the white noise, helping people to be aligned, help them to understand the purpose. In this last decade or so, I've been working hard together with the leadership team to get us more and more aligned. The way I kind of described it is we were, all of us were basically heading west. And we moved from basically heading west to now we're heading for California, to now we're heading for Northern California, to now we're heading for between San Francisco and Carmel. Now I don't think we're ever going to get to just one spot, because there's too many people with too many directions. But we're just closing in on this more and more. And we're turning the great ship. And the image that we've been using is, when the Queen Mary goes, you turn the wheel, and a mile later, because the momentum is so much in this direction, a mile later, changes start happening. And let me help you to see the change of the turning that we've been doing in the last number of years. To my perception, when 40 Days of Purpose came around, it was the beginning of a great change in our community. How many of you were here for 40 Days of Purpose? So, wait for a second. Raise your hands again and look around. Okay? How long ago was 40 Days of Purpose?
10, 12.
Decade. Yeah. Yeah. So we have part of the reason why so many people are here is because 40 Days of Purpose started that movement. Believe it or not, we had small groups and Bible studies who so strenuously objected to doing a course that we would all do together, that some groups said we won't. You can't make us. Believe it or not. And I love that first line out of the book. What's the first line? It's not about you. Just start off with, it's not about you. It's not about your stuff. It's not about your way. It's not about your life. It's not about you. It's about Him. And what we did was everything we could to help people understand a different direction. And if we could do 40 Days of Purpose every once in a while as a refresher, I think it would be okay. But people would say, oh, we've been through that before, Pastor, I don't need to do it again. Yes, you do. It's just like saying, oh, I've been through the small catechism before, I don't need to do that again. Yes, you do. Because, in your alignment, you've changed, and you're going to notice different things. People would see the program. We had a huge program in helping people to understand the sale of our care center and the purchase of the community center and the sale of property on the north side to be able to do that. I mean, that sucked so much energy out of our congregation because it took us so long to get people aligned on this. And we spent basically 6 months just getting the congregation to get why we were able to move very quickly. But has that been of a benefit to us? Nancy, you're there every day. What's the change for the adult daycare?
It's given us more space. It's given us a better view in terms of the community. I think it's aligned us better with the community as a whole. You know, the whole program. You know,
the whole program is better because we are better aligned as a congregation, and it's been a great blessing to you. It's been a greater blessing to the daycare center, the child daycare center, because this is a program, as an example, we used to spend between $30,000 and $50,000. The high year was $70,000 $30,000 to $50,000 of support for the program. Now, the program is paying for itself. And we basically, we sold $1 million building, built $1 million building, spent $600,000 to repair it, and it's profitable. Both in terms of people coming to Christ, souls, and kids coming to our school. I mean, that was a major drain on us, the community, the care center, as an organization that became an asset. And we said we have to start looking at things that are drains on us financially too. It wasn't that the program wasn't great, but it was draining us, and we never knew how much it was going to cost us. And it took a lot of energy because people were saying, you're trying to, you remember the day you came in here and said, Pastor, I heard you're trying to close down the adult daycare center. That's what I'm understanding, you know. And I said, no, that's not what we're doing. And people got excited about it, and a lot of buzz went on. It took us a long time to kind of settle people down from that. We started trying to help people get to Forgiveness Works. Why did we start doing Forgiveness Works? What do you think? What does it do?
Teaches about stewardship.
Teaches stewardship. What else?
Commitments.
It talks about commitments, pledging. What else?
Beginning transformation.
Starting transformations. One of the things it does is, Teresa, what are the things that we're asking people to pledge to in Forgiveness Works, because you live this?
Bible study.
Bible study?
Service.
Service.
Worship attendance.
Worship attendance.
And financial commitments.
Financial commitments. Those 4 things. That's what we're trying to teach people are important commitments around here. 40 Days of Purpose, you remember in the back of our church, we still have those 5 areas of growth, or 5 areas of commitment. So in response to the 5 areas of commitment, we said we have to help people understand what we're doing as the body of Christ, and where do I fit in. And so we're asking people to commit to Bible study, commit to the service, commit to worship attendance. And it's the same reason why in 2005 and 2006 we had a mission statement that included the last phrase: we're going to live a life of forgiveness, live forgiveness in Jesus' name through dynamic worship, devoted Bible study, loving care, faithful service, and committed support. We're trying to teach people these are areas that you have as a Christian. It's not about going to church. It's about life. It's a stewardship of life. You're going to hear that phrase come up again. We started doing building on blessings. Why did we deal with building on blessings? What did it accomplish? What kind of projects did we work on?
Parking lot.
Did some repairs around here. What else?
Investment in youth staff.
Investment in youth staff. Huge investment in youth staff. Biggest thing was when we started looking at it, we had a congregation who had this kind of feeling like we didn't care about debt. The biggest piece of it went to pay off debt. You know, in the last 4 years, we have paid off $1 million of debt. And a big chunk of it was building on blessings. We're getting that part of it, of our congregation, aligns, because everybody says, well, we can't do this or we shouldn't do this because we're not dealing with our debt. And there's kind of this undercurrent. So we're aligning more and more. Next thing was right-sizing our school. That is huge for our congregation in terms of making that change, right-sizing. Believe it or not, I used to go to the church council, and Lee, and before Lee, Carol and Greg, and Reed before Ed, and I would go and say, this is what we believe we have to do for this next year. And we'd say we need to have a $100 increase in user fees. And the church council, in wisdom, would say, make it 25. and figure it out. And so we had to change all of our schools. Now, what we're doing, instead of saying we're going to maintain this size of a school and this many rooms staffed, we're saying we're going to have as large of a school as we have students for. And right-sizing our schools has changed our economic outlook. It's changed the energy in our congregation. It's been an incredible positive move for us, even as we right-size all of our programs. So what people are now saying is we're not going to keep the institutional size the same size just because it's the institution. And we'll be faithful to everyone and faithful to our workers, but we've riffed a couple of people. And we've downsized. When you think about this, in right-sizing our school and right-sizing our whole ministry, in the last decade, we are 17 full-time equivalent fewer workers. At one point, we had 180 paychecks coming out of here. Now we have about 100 or so. But that's the huge change in our ministry. And while, if you're coming every week, you wouldn't see that. You have to really live it every day to see that. So we've been right-sizing, we've been helping people to understand what we're trying to accomplish as the body of Christ, and that we're being fiscally responsible. We started the Eternity Circle, and from here to eternity. What was that trying to do?
Teach people more about the stewardship again and provide for our future.
Teach people about stewardship and provide for our future. I wonder what that is.
Give email.
Oh, okay. I got white noise. So the Eternity Circle, we're securing our future. You know that we have $15 million of planned giving for our congregations, church, and school. What do you think that will do for our school ministry? It'll ensure the next century. If we do this right, if we apply it right, and the gifts are coming in, and the reason why we did it in this order, and it couldn't tell everybody, explain to everybody what's going on, but when we're teaching about this, there is a wealth tsunami coming through. We talk about waves. The greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world is going to happen between about 2015 and 2022. The greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world. And we weren't even talking to people about planned giving. And we need to. It's a huge issue for us. And the next wave will come through when the next generation goes in another 20, 30 years. You know, because that's the way it goes. So it's wise stewardship for us to talk with people about what God has given them and how to use it. And we've spent a lot of energy. Teresa and I in particular have spent a lot of energy securing the future of our congregation, as well as lots of other people. And you individually have done it. People have individually have spent a lot of energy to think about, well, I've got to, God's given me these blessings. I've got to do something for the next generation, and how am I going to ensure that the church that I love is and the ministry that I love is going to continue on. The way that I talk to people about it is this: if I can show you a way that you can take care of your family and take care of the ministry you love, and limit your exposure to government taxes, would you talk to us about it? And people are saying, well, that sounds like a good idea to me. And they're doing this. And so, you know, what will happen in another 20 years or so is either the next pastor will bless me or curse me, and bless us or curse us for this idea. But I think it's going to be a blessing if we do it right. We have instituted Omega. What's Omega done for us? What's one thing?
Got a lot more people in Bible study before.
A lot of people in Bible study than before. What else?
Teaching us how to be mentors.
Teaching us how to be mentors, because the church council and our strategic plan said we need to be mentors in the Christian faith. 10 years ago, they knew this. We didn't have a way to do it. And the reason on day one, when I looked at the material and Jason and I first started talking, he said, we have a mutual interest. We want people to be mentors in the faith. You know, it's not another program. It is, how do I teach people to be a mentor, how to mentor someone else in the Christian faith? Because that is, when we talked earlier about the challenges that we have of bringing people from outside of us and maturing people in the Christian faith, that is the way to do it. That's the way the church grows. You know, and so, well, we keep on going. Community walk. We put a lot of effort into that last year. Why do we do a community walk? What's one reason? Improve our visibility in the community. What else?
Draw others into the faith.
Draw others into the faith. What else?
To find out what the community needs.
Find out what the community needs. What else?
Teach us how to do it.
Good.
Teach us how to do it.
Teach us how to speak about our faith. We got 200 people plus that were trained in a normal conversation to say, hey, can I pray for you about that? And move a conversation from talking about A to something spiritual, and no longer have the anxiety of doing that. What else?
Part of the Great Commission.
It's part of the Great Commission. And it's also training us for when we go start other missions, because that's one of the ways you go to a community, you start talking with them about what the community needs, is can I pray for you? We're a praying group. You know, we're starting a church, would you like to? You know, connecting with people is that interpersonal relationship that we're trying to train people in. How about this? Membership covenant.
Teach everyone what our expectation is to be a follower of Christ.
Show people what it is that we expect people about this relationship. We're defining expectations. So with all these kinds of things, is it that we're going to kick you out if you're not a member, if you don't sign a covenant? No, we want the conversation about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. If you look at this, you say, man, we've run a lot of programs in the last 10 years, right? All this has been doing is starting to turn us, train us, get us ready to go. It's kind of like, how many of you have been through basic training? Military basic training. Okay. Tim, I'll ask you a question. In the military, did they explain to you what they wanted you to come out as in the end? What they wanted you to be?
Not right away.
Not right away. It was a lot of...
Put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, it started off by putting, and I remember my first day, there was actually a line there, and they had footprints, because they want to teach you to stand at attention, your feet are to be at 45-degree angles, you stand like this, and to teach you how to be at the right distance between one another, they put a pair of feet every couple of feet, instead of doing dress right, dress or something like that, they showed you exactly where they wanted you to stand. Then I had a drill sergeant who said, this is how you do left face. This is how you do right face. Let's try it now. Left face, right face. It was just basic training to try and get people from being a mass of folks with their own identity and understanding to an army that will accomplish the will of a nation. So that's the kind of movement. And we're doing a lot of basic training and a lot of prep work for this. This is changing hearts and minds and attitudes. Now we're getting to the point of starting to perform. We needed a critical mass of people who dealt with these issues, and it took us a decade to do it, to deal with all of these issues, so that we start seeing the whole vision of what it is to be an Acts 2 church. Remember how it describes us? More and more. All of this stuff is moving us closer and closer to the Acts 2 church, as well as kind of the normal things that we do. So, sow for a double harvest. What's that doing? We're trying to.
Finish the community center, put roof on the
Finish
church.
the community center, put the roof on the church. What else? Engage people in the purpose, talk to them face to face, talk about where we're going, have a continued relationship with the senior pastor and hear it so that we don't spend a lot of energy doing everything else. And did everyone get involved with a high level of energy? You know, it's starting now. It's a momentum building thing. You know, what a blessing. Is Rajin, how much preparation time did we do for the cookout? Was it 3 weeks?
Yes, just about 3 weeks.
Just about 3 weeks. Can you imagine feeding hundreds and hundreds of people with 3 weeks preparation? Because that's when we needed people to start coming in. And we're going to try and finish talking to the congregation before September. Get this sowed for a double harvest, so we have more and more people aligned. So, with all that stuff, are we complicated or aligned and purposeful?